Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastish B.
And welcome back. So in today's episode I'm having a look at my personal top 10 Commodore 64 releases of 2019. It was a really good year last year for Commodore 64 releases. There were tons of really AAA titles released out there and lots of cool indie stuff, physical releases, digital only, everything. They covered everything last year. I never got to play every single game, obviously, I don't think anybody can, but I played a lot of the bigger stuff. Overall, I got to play the vast majority of games came out, and that's what this list is made up of. And as per usual with these lists, right before the number one position, I got a few honorable mentions that we'll check out as well. And without further ado, let's get on with the list. Berks 4 is a great shoot-'em-up style game with gameplay similar to old arcade classics like Berserk or Robotron. It was a digital monastery release, which is the game development division of Hokuto Force, the C64 cracking and demo group. John Williams, no, not that John Williams, was an old school coder for the group who did games on the C64 like Shadow Dancer and First Samurai back in the day. Gameplay involves traversing these mazes looking for keys, all the while blasting robots and enemies. It's pretty fast-paced shooter action with large doses of strategy if you really want to get anywhere. Nice bright and colourful graphics with cool music. Although the sound effects does get a little bit annoying after a while, it's still an excellent throwback to 80s style arcade games or retro computer games, and is another C64 hidden gem for sure.
Number 9.
Super Goatron is the first game here made for RGCD's 16KB cartridge competition, and is just a whole lot of fun in such a small package. It was coded by Mika Misfit Karanen, who also did Cheese and Onion, which is a very impressive Commodore VIC-20 platform game. Super Goatron is a bit of a mix of Space Invaders with a little bit of Arkanoid thrown in for good measure. It has very well designed and unique stages, extremely addictive gameplay, some nice high-res graphics, and a pretty good music score. Round up a fun game that anyone can pick up and play and have a really good time with. You can also pick up a physical cartridge version of this game from The Future is 8-Bit, a very cool online store that has a bunch of other excellent cheap C64 physical games and peripherals, so definitely check those guys out.
Number 8.
Man Cave was released through Megastyle and is only coder Chris Stanley's second game he's ever made, which is most impressive, as this game improves on his first fun release, The Exploding Fish, tenfold, and that was also released through Megastyle in 2018. In this wacky fun little arcade style game, your goal is to gather up all your old stash of adult magazines that has been littered all over the house by your bratty kids, getting them and stashing them before the wife finds them. As you can see, the gameplay is very reminiscent of those old arcade titles and has you hiding and dodging your way to victory in a very fast-paced style. And just like those old games, every couple of levels you also have a bonus stage to break up the gameplay repetition a bit. The game even sports trophies or achievements, which must be one of the first C64 games to do so, which is a very interesting addition. The graphics are very nice and detailed, with funny intermission animations as well. The music is superb by Roy Wedding, who does some Sid interpretations of classic 80s songs, and they all sound pretty brilliant. As a bonus, if you buy the game through Megastar, you also get a fun little arcade single screen game called Dockster's Digger as a bonus. This is a great little game by Chris, and I look forward to see what his next C64 game is going to be. Endless Forms Most Beautiful was a game for me at least that felt like it came out of nowhere, but damn did it impress the hell out of me. I didn't know its history, being a 2012 ZX Spectrum game and then getting a PC remake that same year, which this C64 version is based on. The game is an arcade platform game that is another great throwback to classic arcade style quick gameplay. It reminds me a bit of Bomberman and other great 80s throwbacks. You have to rescue these little imp characters while avoiding the enemy or just blowing them up with your bombs. bombs while trying not to blow yourself up. Good luck with that. The game was coded by Ricky B80 and he did a wonderful job with this conversion. And like many games on this list, it sports the C64's high-res look, which a lot of modern games are using, and it looks quite fantastic. The intro music track is brilliant, as is the in-game tracks, which are SID renditions of classic rock music, like Aerosmith's Walk This Way for example, which are very cool and are done really well by SID composer NM156. Another great little arcade title to add to your C64 list.
Number 6.
Neutron was another game that appeared out of nowhere, and I was really surprised at the sheer quality of it. It's another product of RGCD's 16KB cartridge competition, which is always responsible for bringing out some impressive games by even more impressive programmers. This one was done entirely by Sarah Jane Avery, and is a fantastic little vertical scrolling space shoot 'em up, which has odes to arcade games like Star Force and Slapfight. The game sports 9 stages with the obligatory weapons upgrade, mini bosses, and end of stage big bosses. It's a lot of game crammed into a small package, and is an extremely satisfying experience, graphically, musically, and most importantly gameplay, which feels super smooth. And the difficulty is set just right, so this isn't one in a long line of ridiculously difficult C64 shoot 'em ups, so you'll be enjoying your blasting action without being annoyed to death. Sarah, as of making this, is also working on a sort of follow-up called Soul Force, which may be out by the time this video airs, or is getting an early 2020 release. Check out Sarah on Twitter also for updates on all her C64 projects, including an RPG for the C64 called Briley Witch Chronicles, based on her own book series, which is another one to look out for in the future.
Number 5.
So this isn't just one game, but it's 3, and I wanted to highlight them as a group of conversions done by Antonio Savona and his team. The 3 games in question are Chopper Command, Keystone Kapers, and Frostbite, all released in 2019. These are a bunch of Atari Activision classics from the early 80s that for whatever reason never got a conversion to the C64 until now. All 3 of these are pure labors of love from the team that built these games from the ground up for the C64, with lush, colorful graphics and some excellent new C64 SID tunes by Sol Cross on all the games to spice them up C64 style, and some excellent new title screens. Chopper Command is a cool Defender style clone by Bob Whitehead, who went on to form Accolade a couple years later. Keystone Kapers is a fun side-scroller by programmer Gary Kitchen, who also made the excellent C64 software title called Gary Kitchen Game Maker. And lastly is Frostbite by Steve Cartwright, that's a bit of a mix of Frogger, Qbert, and other arcades of the early 80s period. All 3 of these games are free, as they are unofficial conversions of old Activision games, and are totally worth checking out, with their great attention to detail, nailing their gameplay, and actually improving on the graphics to make them much better with some great music. Find these and load them up. The Age of Heroes was released in the first quarter of 2019 by Cytronic Software for the C64. I've been keeping tabs on this game for a while now, ever since I first found out it was by the same team that did Organism, another fantastic little C64 game. With Akim Volkers on programming duties, Trevor Story on graphics and design, and Sol Cross on music and sound effects, you know this is going to be something special. The story is you have to gather a bunch of stones to get rid of some evil in the land, you know, your usual fantasy nonsense backstory. It's pretty much on par with Rastan's throwaway plot. As you can probably see though, this game is very much inspired by Rastan, particularly the C64 version, but oh, does it do it 1,000 times better. Just like the Rastan arcade, this is a scrolling hack and slash with the ability to pick up weapons and smart bombs and kill all manner of beasts and bosses. There are 15 levels to play through, and you can access them from a map and tackle them in all different orders, although your path will eventually be blocked if you haven't found the stones for completing the levels, which gives you access to new areas. The best part about this game is that you can backtrack and replay any level again, which really helps you upgrade your character, as the game employs some light RPG elements. The more beasts you kill, the stronger you get as you level up, so replaying older levels is key. Visually, I think the stages are really varied and look really good. I love that they are not too long and don't overstay their welcome. Taking out the giant head bosses gives you access to better weapons like a giant axe or improved sword. There is a massive variety in monsters you can fight, and each one can be taken out in different ways. The game feels really good and is not slow and clunky like the original C64 Rastan, but moves briskly and handles quite well well. There are also some really nice fantasy-esque tunes to be heard throughout the game. The game is also generally pretty easy, which makes it way more accessible to the average gamer. Also, make sure to check out the excellent music demo that's also included in the game.
Number 3.
Trove 64, Drain of Doom on Commodore 64. This game is an absolute love letter to the classic 80s rogue game, but also bringing its own unique elements to the mix. The backstory is there was a zombie outbreak in the 80s in a small town, but the residents were able to lead the slow-moving horde down to the bottom of an abandoned mine and then flooded it. Unfortunately, the trove, or drain in a sense, has been removed, causing the mine to drain. Your character starts at the bottom floor and you need to work your way up all 64 levels to the surface, all the while activating the 8 pumps spread throughout to refill the mine. All the classic roguelike elements are here. Looting for equipment, battling creatures like skeletons, toads, slime, etc., turn-based moves, randomized levels, and of course, permadeath. This game is extremely addictive and feels very modern even though it looks extremely retro. I love the fact that you also have to use the keyboard to play it, just like with the original Rogue. The game was programmed and designed by Wolfgang Botcher, who used to run a number of BBSs in the 1980s. He's got his own website here, which I'll leave a link to in the description, and you can read up on all his latest Commodore 64 projects. The music in this game is fantastic as well, and is done by TDM of the C64 demo group Triad, and is a great atmospheric SID tune. The best part of everything here is that the game is free, so check out csdb.dk. I'll leave a link in the description so you can download it, and it plays perfectly on a real C64 through VAS and on the C64 Mini, although I'd highly recommend plugging in a keyboard obviously for the controls. It's a great game in a classic style, so be sure to check it out.
Number 2.
Bruce Lee Return of Fury is the second fan-made Bruce Lee C64 game to be made and was released by Megastyle in 2019. Story-wise, this one is a direct sequel to the first, where the original wizard dude has rebuilt his castle and Bruce can't help but challenge him, as in the movie Game of Death. Yama and the ninja make their return, and now all three can be human-controlled with Protovision's 4-player adapter, making this the ultimate Bruce Lee multiplayer experience. Gameplay-wise, because coder DMX, who did the sequel, used the original source code, this game feels exactly like the original with all its quirks intact, and makes it feel a little bit more authentic than the previous game. Collecting lanterns, avoiding traps all make a return, and the new screens are well implemented with really great, well thought out level designs. Difficulty is probably on par with the original, meaning it's quite easy but a real fun experience. Graphics and sound are pretty much a carbon copy of the original, with the inclusion of an excellent title screen and brilliant loader music by Anders Rodal, who did the awesome loader music in Megastyle's Exploding Fish. I had so much fun with this new release and would highly recommend it to any classic fan of the original, and I think it stands alone as a really great game for newbies to the C64 as well. Okay, let's stop that list for 1 second here and check out 4 honorable mentions. These games were pretty good but just missed the top 10 mark. Okay, so first up is a game called Doc Cosmos. This is a really cool game, and if I'd made this video any other day, it might have been in my top 10 quite easily. It's just I only had to use 10 games, so I had to pare it down a little bit. This was another game made for the RGC cartridge competition, so there's a lot of good games that came out of that. There is a sequel to this game that's being worked on as we speak. Hopefully we'll see it in 2020 this year. Anyway, Doc Cosmos, check it out. So next we got a game called Sizzler. This was made for the Zap64 2019 annual. This game is like a side-scrolling platform game. It is very cool. The graphics, as you can see, are very nice. It's got good music. The only problem with it, the only reason why I didn't put it in my top 10 is because it is insanely difficult. So if you have the patience and skill to play this game, then it's going to be an awesome game for you, but I just found it very frustrating, even though I can tell there's an excellent game under here that's just waiting to be discovered. Anyway, if you're up for a challenge, then check out Sizzler. Okay, and next we got Run Demon Run. This is another game by Trevor Story, Akam Volkers, and Richard Bayless. They've already done a whole bunch of games that you've already seen on this list so far. This is an endless runner. This is a relatively new genre, gameplay speaking, but on the C64 there's virtually no games of this type. There's hardly any anyway, so it's really nice to see this kind of game represented. Having said that, I'm not really into endless runners. It's not really my style of game. So, but I don't want to dismiss the game just because I don't like its style. I think it's a well-made game. If you're into endless runners, you're gonna really like this, and it's well worth checking out. And last but definitely not least is Precinct 20 Dead Strange. This is kind of a side-scrolling action game with slight detective elements. This game has a really good atmosphere, the music is very cool, the graphics are quite good. It has a cool storyline, it has almost everything going for it. I just found the gameplay to be a little bit clunky, and it just didn't make it fun to play for me personally. I know a lot of people like this game. I think with a little bit more fine tuning it could have easily been like right up there in the top 5. But as it stands, it's still a pretty cool game. So if you're looking for something just a little bit different, then Precinct 20 is definitely going to deliver that. It just misses the mark for me personally. And now let's check out the number 1 game.
And number 1 is...
And here it is, La Vie de Mort, my favorite C64 game of 2019. And it's another game by Antonio Savona and Sol Cross, the guys responsible for those excellent C64 Activision Conversions. This game just oozes quality from start to finish. It's not extremely long, but it's jammed with detail, which is something I prefer to an overlong slog just for the sake of making a longer game. In this excellent platform adventure game, you play a monk on the run from the Templars, who ends up at this haunted church. Gameplay it's very similar to the classic Monty on the Run game, where you collect scrolls revealing more about the story as you try to find all the crosses in the church. With its high-res graphics and excellent haunting music from Sol Cross, it's a wonderful game that is really fun to play, and it's not super difficult either, but challenging enough to keep you coming back to see the entire game through. Double-Sided Games also has a full physical release for this one, so the option to get that awesome edition is still available. This is a highly recommended game from me that all C64 owners should give a try. It's just pure excellent stuff. And that's it. That's my top 10 for 2019 on the Commodore 64. Obviously there was a lot of games like I mentioned that I never got to play, so if there's any of your favorites that you didn't see here, please let me know in the comments. I can maybe check them out and add them into other videos or do single reviews on them, because there's a couple that I really wanted to play. But due to the fact that these videos take weeks to put together, I had to start putting it together in December, so there had to be some sort of cutoff. I think the representation of games on the Commodore 64 in 2019 was insanely impressive. I can't wait to see what this year brings. I think we're going to be in store for some really great stuff. And thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. If you can like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!